Good morning, everyone. Always a pleasure to be with you all and see your smiling faces from wherever you're dialing into. I want to pick up on Mike's Aligning with Success call that he had last night. A really important call. All of his calls are wonderful. This one resonated with me because he talked about specifically one of my all-time favorite books, which he's been promoting a lot recently, and I've got here not just one copy. I, like Mike, have got multiple copies of this book, and I try to give it out to people as often as I can because it's really profound and truly life-changing. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I want to read a couple of quotes from it to set the scene a little bit. At the very end of the book, he says this: Austrian public opinion pollsters recently reported that those held in the highest esteem by most of the people interviewed are neither the great artists nor the great scientists, neither the great statesmen nor the great sports figures, but those who master a hard lot with their heads held high. I love that. I love that. Whatever our lot is, I have come to find, I'm only 45, time certainly seems to race on, but I certainly find as time does march forward that life tends to get a little harder. We anticipate it being a breeze when we're young, and I think there's an element of naivety in that. Perhaps as we walk into the business world and become business owners, perhaps when we join a cause as noble and as worthy as Nietzsche's of humans being more, encouraging people in this mighty venture to get balance in their lives and to get order and to get priorities in alignment with what matters most, we think with such a great cause it should be a walk in the park. But it isn't, is it? It's actually quite the opposite. And certainly helping people catch the vision of what's important and what matters most is often one of the hardest things. I've got just a couple of quotes that I wanted to share here from Viktor Frankl. To give, again, like I said, to give perspective, because what I want to talk about here is making sure that we get our goals right, or critically, that we're using this time that we've got now to evaluate our goals and to adjust. I was talking to someone very close to me a couple of days ago who had set some wonderful goals pre the quarantining, the global quarantining that had been imposed upon everyone. And they felt really good about these goals. They felt that it was the right thing to do. They'd been very prayerful about it, very mindful. They felt that this was just the right path. But of course, the world got ripped from underneath them as they got quarantined, and the whole world got flipped on its head and things changed. And I asked him, do you feel under the circumstances that it is appropriate to review your goals, to assess them and to reevaluate? Do you need to be doing something different now because your circumstances and your environment has changed? He was resistant to this because he felt the goal was right in the first place. And it's like, well, it was right then, but the environment is different and the world is different right now. So we do need to make some adjustments. I want to invite everyone to use this time that we've got to reevaluate the goals that they've got. Are they aligned? Are they in harmony with the current living environment that we have? And are there things that we can do better to achieve and to become more and to do better? Even if part of that doing and becoming is learning, as Viktor Frankl talks about, to suffer a little more with a greater sense of nobility. Sometimes that is our lot, isn't it? I don't believe that's our lot here in Nietzsche because I think we've got too much on the table that is good, that gives us actionable power to do something good and to make a difference. We've got too many resources and tools to be rendered impotent in some way, like so many other people are feeling right now. We don't need to feel that way at all. Listen to this, listen to what he says here. Talking to people, Viktor Frankl, for those of you that haven't read this book, let me give you some context. Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist that was captured and imprisoned in the during the Holocaust in the prisoner of war camps. had a frightful experience, and really by luck, and perhaps by fate, perhaps by blessing because of what he needed to do afterwards. I don't know. That's perhaps presumptuous of me to say. He survived. It certainly seemed like luck if you survived, but he did. The first half of the book is kind of sharing his insights as a psychiatrist in the camps. The other half of the book is how he applied that learning, that perspective of learning to suffer and to find meaning in suffering to life afterwards, and how he treated his patients afterwards. An incredible context and perspective that is very rare. It sounds very deep and very heavy, but I promise you, if you haven't read this, it really will change your life. It's incredibly profound and almost prophetic in the way that he teaches. But he says this, he says, any attempt to restore a man's inner strength in the camp had first to succeed in showing him some future goal. Nietzsche's words, he who has a why to live for can bear with almost any how. He who has a why to live for can bear with almost any how. Our task is to help people in these circumstances to learn how to bear with them a little better. It's remarkable to me to see in such a grand scale so many people struggling during this quarantine period. I understand the struggle. I understand the challenge that people have. I've mentioned before that one of the great problems that people are facing right now is they've loved the idea of working from home, but now all of a sudden they feel like they're bored. They don't know how to use their time right. And the reason for that is they aren't directed to any particular cause. It suggests perhaps that whatever they were doing for employment was simply filling time. They were just going through motions. There was no real purpose to engage them, to excite them, to attract them, to give them meaning and value. So during this time, one second. Please ask your mum. I'm on a call right now. Sorry, I'm getting interrupted by my son who's writing me notes and I can't quite read it. Close the door again. Thank you. He says this, I do apologize, is that they try to be so subtle. He's hanging there in the background. You can't see him, but he's right in front of my face, just waiting patiently. And it's like, man, would you please just leave the room? It's so distracting. But at least he didn't make a noise. It was very courteous of him. So I love this point. What was really needed was a fundamental change in our attitude towards life. We had to learn ourselves, and furthermore, we had to teach the despairing man. I like this. We had to learn for ourselves, and furthermore, we had to teach the despairing others. It's certainly our responsibility in NICAM to put ourselves first. That sounds wonderfully selfish, and you might go, hang on, but it's true, isn't it? It's true. The first rule of a paramedic is what? Ensure their own safety. What's the instruction? How can I help the other person, the person that's in the car wreck, if I'm injured myself, if I cause myself damage? I can't. I'm no good to anyone if I injure myself. What do they tell us when we're on the airplanes and they're going through the safety instructions? Secure your own face mask first, yeah, and then help the children. It seems contradictory, doesn't it? Everything inside of me tells me, put it on my child first. But if I'm passing out and I fumble and I struggle with that, then that's no help to anyone. So first and foremost, we have a responsibility to ourselves to get aligned, to figure out our purpose, to figure out our meaning. And then from there, it is our obligation to help the despairing, the discouraged, the downtrodden, to find their path. And he says, and what do we teach them? That it did not really matter what we expected from life. I love this. That it didn't really matter what we expected from life, but rather what life expected from us. What do we expect from life? Frustratingly, it's largely irrelevant. What does life expect from me? I have found it's been my unique privilege to suffer in ways that others don't. It doesn't make me special, it just makes me me. Each of you have been called upon to suffer and struggle in ways that are unique to you. And that's okay too. When we learn to embrace that for what it is and what it represents, then we can start to find meaning in the suffering. If I'm resistant to it, if I am prone to a particular vulnerability, weakness, be it physical, emotional, mental, whatever it may be, if I resist that because I refuse to accept that is my lot, because I believe I was made for something different, but life is telling me you weren't. You were made for this. The more I resist, the harder it becomes to embrace and discover the lesson. So there needs to be a degree of what I call surrender, not in the context of giving in. When I use this word surrender, when we have these challenges and these struggles, this adversity or the suffering, to surrender doesn't mean to give in or to give up. It means to let go of our illusions. To surrender means to let go of our illusions of what we think is real, and let go of that so that we can embrace reality and confront it seriously and then do something of value as a consequence. I have found when I do that and I embrace my challenges and the unique suffering that I'm called upon to endure, what happens as a result is I start to relate more to other people, and other people start to relate more to me. And all of a sudden I find there is some commonality going on. We've all heard that saying, time heals all wounds. I'm not sure if this translates verbally. I know it does written, but time also wounds all heals. Can you get your head around that? Heals being the heel of the foot. Yeah, it's got a way of doing that. So how does this relate to us being here in Nikan right now? What it means is this. Our task is to understand what is our unique responsibility and privilege with Nikan. I believe that there are far too many of us that do not lay hold upon all of the privileges that Nikan offers us. I don't know why that is, but Nikan offers so much, and yet too many of us grasp onto it like that. Yeah, maybe just pat it like a dog. Yeah, maybe just stroke it just a little bit versus embrace it. Why aren't we embracing it fully? Why are we just skirting around, dabbling, playing a little bit, being entertained occasionally by what it offers, fantasizing a little bit? I heard this story, and a few of you may have heard this story before, of a man whose dream was to go on a wonderful cruise ship and to travel around the Mediterranean. And he dreamed of this, and he wasn't a well-off man. So he spent years and years saving as best he could to go on this luxurious, beautiful cruise liner that would take him around the Mediterranean and take him to all of these wonderful historic locations, places where the Apostle Paul preached and ministered, and where all of these great places in history that he could be a part of and experience for himself. He got there eventually. In his twilight years, he made it on this cruise ship. And while he was there, to make sure that he could manage, he packed with him his tins of beans and his sachets of drinks that he could mix for his orange juice and what have you while he was away. And on the trip, he would sit in his little cabin and eat his tins of beans and drink his sachets of orange juice. And he would dream about, wouldn't it be great to go on some of these beautiful parties that these cruise ships have? Everyone's talking like they're having so much fun. If only I could do that. He just felt he couldn't afford to. It would be too expensive. He could afford the ticket, but he couldn't afford all that other stuff. Eventually, because of course, anyone that's been on a cruise ship knows there is entertainment in abundance. All you can eat buffets, dances and cabarets and entertainment and theater and you name it. And he would just look in awe at all of the delights and go, I would just love to sink my teeth into that, to participate. But he just went back to his cabin and ate his humble beans. And then on the night before the conclusion of the trip, one of the staff saw him and they asked him which of all of the farewell parties would he be attending. And it was in that moment that he realized in the cost of his ticket, all of the all-you-can-eat buffets, all of the entertainment, all of the cabarets, all of the parties were all included. And there he was sitting in his little cabin, eating his tins of beans. He lived, ladies and gentlemen, far below his privileges, didn't he? He lived far below his privileges. Why do I share this? Because it's my belief that there is far too many of us here in Nicam that live below our privileges. There is so much that is offered to us in so many different ways, be it product experience that improves our health, be it the community that improves our sense of well-being and our wellness, our emotional wellness, the business opportunity which can improve our mind and our intellect and our financial pillar, and everything else that can strengthen the humans being more, 5 pillars of health, opportunity, that gives us context and understanding and added direction in what we want to achieve and become. All of this is available for us. And critically, when we grasp it, we are empowered to share it. But like I said, too many live below their privileges. Why? I don't think it's because we're lazy. And I don't think it's lack of character. So if anyone's asking themselves that question, please don't beat yourself up. I don't think that's the reason. The reason I believe it is, in many instances, is our perception of ourself gets in the way. Who we think we are interferes. And often, unfortunately, we think, who am I to be great? Who am I to run out there and achieve all of these wonderful things that I see others achieving? Who am I to eat at the all-you-can-eat buffet when I've just got my tin of beans? Yeah. And that holds us back, and it prevents us from opening our mouths. When I have true conviction, not just in what I have, but in who I am, when those two combine, that's where the power comes in. When is the best opportunity? We're often asked this, aren't we? And I hear so many times people say, there's never been a better time than now. Well, actually, the best time, in my opinion, is when we truly understand what is in front of us with Nicam, and when we truly realize and embrace fully who we really are. And when those two connect, then there has never been a better time to be in Nicam. That is the moment where true opportunity is revealed. The opportunity is ever present in reality. It's always there. It's like the air that we breathe, or it's like the radio, where the sound wave somehow in the air around me right now, music is playing. I don't know how that works, by the way. I'm not clever enough to understand that. I've not studied that out. But somehow around me, there is music playing. And you might go, oh, I can't hear anything. I can't hear anything either. But if I pulled my radio out and dialed in to the right frequency, I'd pick it up. It's there, but I'm not just tuned in yet. Our task is to tune in. The opportunity is always there. Our task is to tune in. And when tuning in, when we discover our unique purpose, then all of a sudden we become empowered to do something with it. And then people are attracted to us because they feel it. As I've always said, convincing teaching comes from conviction. And when I've got that inner conviction that I know who I am, and I know what I possess, and I know what my opportunities are, and what I can offer you, then I stand all of a sudden with posture and with presence, with confidence, with power, with authority. And whatever comes out of my mouth, even if it's fumbled, even if I'm not good with words, it's got meaning and value and magnetism in it. Yeah? It comes from within, doesn't it? It all comes from within. But too often, we define ourselves by our circumstances. We define ourselves by our suffering. We define ourselves by our struggles, by our missed opportunities, by our misunderstanding of what we think we should expect from life, versus deciding instead to embrace and surrender our illusions and accept instead what life is offering us. I asked a number of times when I've been at events, a show of hands, and it's always unanimous, by the way, please, by show of hands, will you raise your hand if life has turned out for you exactly as you expected? And it's always a unanimous no hands up. No one ever puts their hand up, ever. And I've asked that in a lot of countries around the world. How many of you have expected, has life turned out for you exactly as you expected? It doesn't work that way for anyone. And so we find we each have a unique life to live. Our tendency is to compare, isn't it? To go, I want what they've got, I want what they've got. But that comparison is just the thief of joy. And it's also the thief of meaning and understanding. So if we can learn to not and to resist the tendency to compare and say, I should be, and I've heard this a lot too, I should be further down the compensation plan in the Nietzsche business than where I'm at, because maybe not. Maybe you're exactly where you should be right now. Yeah? Oh, yeah, but Ben, you don't understand. I've been in this spot for a decade. And what's your point? Maybe that's all part of the plan. Maybe there's something to be learned in that journey that's going to facilitate a shift that's going to break you free into some new sense of being. I have found that, in my life at least, and I know it's different for everyone, but from my own personal experience, there's always lessons in adversity, guaranteed, if we look for them. But there is a different type of adversity that teaches something different, and that is chronic suffering. I'm not sure if there is any of you on the call today that has suffered in a chronic way. Chronic meaning enduring, a long time. Yeah. Those that have had to endure some type of pain or hardship for a long time will understand that what is required from them in such a time is something very different, isn't it? Certainly, it tempers our emotions, our patience, our virtues, our tolerance, our understanding, our compassion, and all of that. And like a refiner's fire, I believe it polishes off the rough edges and turns us into something far greater than, unfortunately, any good opportunity could give us. I'd love it to be the other way around, but it seems to me that the best educator that I've had in my life, aside from great books, has been suffering, has been tribulation, hardship, trials. So if any of you right now, as you're listening to today's call, have felt like you've been struggling a little bit, I want to reassure you that it's okay. A lot of people are putting it into the context of the pandemic. I think that's wonderfully short term, isn't it? It's wonderfully short term. Many of us have struggled for a long time. And if you've struggled for a long time, I want you to know that I love you. One of the greatest starting points I have found when we are struggling and we don't know how to move forward, especially if it's been for a while, is I don't know how to move myself if I feel stuck, yeah? And how do I move forward if my problem is not just that I'm struggling or suffering, but maybe that I feel like I'm doing it in isolation, alone. And I don't believe in myself enough, because that sometimes becomes the fruit of enduring hardship, doesn't it? How do we move forward in such a time? The answer is real clear. We have confidence and assurance in knowing that someone else loves us. Yeah, when we don't quite love ourselves enough, knowing that someone else loves us is the power that we need to rely on to move us forward. And that is why, ladies and gentlemen, we have the Nietzsche Wellness Community. That's why that exists. Because the reality is, for almost everyone, it's a struggle. It's hard. It's not easy, this thing called life. And it's not just because of a pandemic. This is superficial suffering. If getting locked up for a few months is the hardship. I would love that to be the pinnacle of my trials, but it's not. Yeah, I wish it was, but it certainly isn't. But we have this community because we all, at some point or another, need to be able to rely on someone else to help us move forward. We all need it, okay? So please, the critical point is this. Why do I share all of this? Because we need to have the courage and the confidence to share that message, to be vulnerable enough to say, I find it hard too sometimes with whatever it is I might be struggling with, to acknowledge that and to allow someone else to be vulnerable with you and say, let's get through this together. Because true power and strength is not found in our individual capacity to be strong. That is not where it lies. That's a lie that the world tells us today, that we can be everything all at once. That's not true. The true strength that we have comes from our interconnectedness with each other. In our own unique weakness and vulnerability, together, when we are collected and combined and tied up like this, we are strong, and we are strong enough to accomplish everything. Not just anything, everything. Whatever we want to achieve in this business, ladies and gentlemen, if we are joined at the hip, linked arm in arm, shoulder to shoulder, and we've all got each other's back, and we're there for each other, and we know, no matter what, we've got the support and the love and the courage and the conviction of everyone else around us, it will be impossible for us to fail. It would be impossible. And then surely, in that process, in that environment, where we are buoyed up with so much strength, so much feeling, so much love, so much support, surely in a place like that, anyone that joins that wonders what their cause is, what their mission is, couldn't help but get swept away in this wonderful experience called Nikan because of what we offer. Surely everyone would have an equal chance then to succeed in their own way, to overcome their own challenges, to move forward in whichever way life requires them to move, and become a better version of themselves as a result. Yeah? At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. It's not about the money. That's a nice side benefit. It's all about who we become. Surely there would be nothing more tragic than to have means, but to have no meaning. Yeah? I would much rather the other way around, to be full of meaning and have little means. So again, remember, I want to go back to this quote and we'll conclude with this. Pollsters reported, those held in the highest esteem. Now put yourselves in this equation, please, for just a minute, because so often we look at those celebrity type, and I'm not talking Hollywood celebrities, because I don't think anyone on this call idolizes or reveres Hollywood celebrities, but well-known figures such as artists, scientists, great statesmen, or great sportsmen. They're not the ones that are revered, ladies and gentlemen. It's those that master a hard lot with their heads held high. My invitation to you is whatever is causing you to struggle, to sweat, to worry a little bit, I want you to know that you don't need to do it alone, that we're here collectively to support each other because we are a global Nikan wellness community. We're here for each other. And if we can each, in our own struggles, hold our heads high and do this with nobility, then we can help each other grow in ways that will transform our own lives and everyone else's beyond our wildest dreams. And that, I think, makes our real mission come to life in a way that we've never anticipated. And of course, all the wonderful, rich side benefits that come with being on that cruise ship, with all the parties and all you can eat buffets will be yours to enjoy. But let's do that. Let's understand that life expects something of me, and it shouldn't be the other way around. Surrender the illusions, let go, turn into the pain and the struggle, be okay with it, and know that if it's hard, we love you, and we're in this together. You're not in this by yourself. So thank you all very much. I hope this has been a help, and we'll speak to you real
Then
soon.
I'd like to put in an advertisement. Mike's Align with Success on May 4th is when Mary Mira Robson first gave the overview, and last night was the follow-up. So I think those two are really worth listening to make better sense of, or to enhance what you shared today, because
Excellent.
they are connected. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point. Good point. Thank you all so much, everyone, and have a great week. Bye-bye.